Okay, so today Anthropic is releasing Mythos under a code name Fable 5. This is the biggest release from Anthropic in the last 3 years. And it's really a new paradigm where they not only created a new class of models, but it's pretty incredible at what it can do. Now, when Mythos was announced, it was initially available to only select organizations under Project Glasswing. But now it's going to be generally available to public under a new name called Fable 5. They're also releasing Mythos 5, which is exactly the same model under the hood, but with less restricted guardrails. So this essentially is exactly a Mythos class model, but with extra guardrails for safety. I'll show you what exactly that means in a minute. But I want to show you one specific benchmark in this video, and that is the Frontier Code benchmark that was released yesterday by Cognition Labs. They are trying to create a benchmark that replicates the usual software engineering tasks, not just some academic benchmarks. Now, in this specific benchmark, Opus 4.8 is the best model that scores about 13%. GPT 5.5 is only 6%. However, Mythos or Fable 5 just broke this benchmark just after 1 day of the release. Now, Mythos or Fable 5 is scoring about 29%. That is more than 100% improvement on that benchmark, which is kind of incredible. Now, talking about the benchmarks in general, you're going to see that it basically mocks every other model out there, including GPT 5.5. I think this is going to put a lot of pressure on OpenAI to release the 5.6. This is a new class of model that is pretty incredible compared to everything that we have seen, at least on the reported results that Anthropic is sharing today. Now, more importantly, it's generally available. So you can try it today. If you're on Claude Code or Claude.ai, you can try it with your subscription until June 2022. This is going to be 2x the usage of Opus. Unfortunately, after that, you'll have to pay the API pricing, which is 2x of that of Opus, not 5x that was announced with Mythos preview. But still, it's going to be pretty expensive. Okay, so as I was recording this, Cognition updated the benchmark with Fable 5 scores. And now on the full benchmark, this is scoring 46%, which is kind of crazy. Now, so there are 3 different versions of this benchmark. Diamond is the hardest one. Then there is extended version, which is the full one, right? Okay, but I think even more interesting than the benchmark number is a plot like this, which shows that as you increase the reasoning effort of these models, you can get substantially improved results. Now, if you look at Opus 4.8 right now, you can get almost 3 times the performance of Opus 4.8 using Fable at almost exactly the same cost. Now, this model is definitely more expensive compared to Opus. However, this is a lot more intelligent, and with a similar cost structure, you could see substantially more improved results, which is pretty incredible. And if you crank it up to max, this just takes it to a whole different level. Now, the thinking budget is basically test time compute increase. Now, there's a very interesting article from Noam Brown on implications of large-scale test time compute. And in this, he shows that these models that we have today are a lot more capable than what we give them credit for. And his argument is that if you increase the number of thinking budget or tokens beyond these levels that we usually use, there's a lot more capability that we can get out of these models. The main limiting factor right now is the cost associated with those tokens. So he argues that if you keep increasing the number of tokens that the models can use in thinking budget, you are going to start seeing more and more improved results. And as an example of this is auto-tune progress of a model using the auto research package from Andrei Karpathy. Now, you can take back that argument to these models of Mythos class, and you actually start seeing that as you increase the test time compute scaling, the models keeps getting better and better. Okay, so from their blog post, they say Fable's capabilities exceed those of any model that we have ever made generally available. It's state-of-the-art in nearly all the tested benchmarks and AI capabilities, including knowledge work, software engineering, vision, scientific research, and many other areas. Now, this is a Mythos class model with an extra classifier. So they say that without safeguards, Fable 5 capabilities in areas like cybersecurity could be misused to cause serious damage. Therefore, they are launching the model with safeguards, which means that queries on some topics will instead receive a response from next most capable model like Claude Opus 4.8. So this is basically a Mythos class model with an extra classifier on top of it. And if it triggers the classifier, those specific queries are going to be routed to Opus 4.8 instead of Fable 5. So if you see some degradation in responses, that could be one potential reason. Now, they say that the false positive rate down 5% of the sessions, right? So this, I think, is going to be a significant number that people are going to start noticing. But keep in mind that classifier could be the cause. Now, they also released Mythos 5, which is not as the safety guardrails are lifted in some areas, but this is going to be only available to people or organizations within the project Glasswing. Okay, so in terms of pricing, this is going to be $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens. This is going to be one of the most expensive model released by Claude or Anthropic. However, this is not the most expensive model that is available on the market. That goes to GPT 5.4 and GPT 5.5 Pro, which is $30 per million input token and whopping $180 per million output tokens. So Anthropic models are expensive, but they are not as expensive as the most capable GPT 5.5 Pro models. Keep that in mind when you hear conversations around how expensive this model is. In fact, actually, I just realized it's actually $270 per million output tokens if you are using long context. Fable 5 is a 1 million token context window model, and they don't change the pricing based on whether you're using long context or short context. So it's expensive, but not as expensive as GPT 5.5 Pro. Now, it has some really interesting capabilities. So, for example, they used it in drug design. And according to Anthropic, the drug design process was expedited almost 10 times in their specific experiments on protein that were designed by Mythos 5. Similarly, this seems to be the first model that is able to come up with novel hypotheses on molecular biology, right? So we are at a point where we can see that these models started to have taste, or at least these companies are claiming these models have taste in experimentation and they can come up with their own hypotheses, right? Then they have some examples around novel research in genomics. In terms of alignment, this seems to be pretty close to Opus 4.8 in terms of the misaligned behavior. Then they specifically talk about safety classifiers. Now, if you look at Anthropic, it's a very safety-focused company. And in certain areas, that is actually a really good thing to have, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. They say that Mythos class models excel at discovering and exploiting software vulnerabilities. They can thus make cyber attacks sustainably easier and cheaper to commit, right? So they have classifiers which will look at user prompts and try to decipher if those are related to cybersecurity. Then in case of Fable 5, that's going to basically block the responses and use a less capable model. It's kind of weird to say if I call Opus 4.8 a less capable model, but it seems to be compared to Fable 5, and those queries are going to be routed to this comparatively less capable model. Now, let's talk about something that a lot of people and companies are not going to be happy about, and this is their new data retention policy. So they say that with Fable 5 and Mythos 5 and the future models with similar or higher capability levels, we will require the retention of all traffic on Mythos class models on both first and third party surfaces. We won't use this data to train new Claude models or any of non-safety related purposes. And we have instituted new privacy protections, including logging all human access to the data and ensuring the deletion of this after 30 days. Now, this probably is going to fire some flags. A lot of people and organizations are not going to be happy about it, especially if they are going to be keeping both first party and third party surfaces data. So the reason is that this data will help us defend against complex and novel attack, including new jailbreaks and attack that operates across many requests, as well as help us identify and reduce false positives. Okay, another part of the release that I think is not going to be popular. We talked about the pricing, but then Fable 5 is available on API and consumption-based enterprise plans. Now, they say we expect the demand for Fable 5 to be very high and difficult to predict. On the Claude API and consumption-based enterprise plans, Fable 5 is fully available from today. For subscription plans, we would rather give access sooner than later, so they are rolling it out to everybody. You will have access to it through June 22. On June 23rd, we will remove Fable 5 from those plans. Using it after that will require usage credit, which means you're going to be paying the API pricing. Now, this is probably going to be very unpopular, especially if you're paying $200 per month. However, this also shows really that serving these models is extremely expensive, and the reality of free lunch is coming to an end, right? And I expect that, as we have seen, even OpenAI is going to be releasing more expensive models as we go along. It's also great to see the third-party validations. So this is from Cursor Bench, which basically breaks the cursor. Unfortunately, it's really hard to follow these benchmarks anymore, especially right now. The cost axis is reversed for some reason, right? So like, please don't do that if you're building these plots. But if you look at it, even third-party validation is extremely great for this model. Now, I want to close out this video with a tweet from a member of Claude Code. This is Felix, who leads the Claude Cowork team. Okay, so in here he said that we are introducing Claude Code Fable and Mythos to configuration of our next major language model. In here, he say, I would normally highlight the numbers. It's state of the art on nearly all benchmarks. I want to talk about something else because with Fable 5 out in the world, I think the third era quietly started today. And then he talks about what exactly that third era is. So when LLMs first hit the mainstream, users ask them questions like smart search engines or an autocomplete. Then the frontier models moved to tasks, handing the model an entire problem, which bug to fix, which doc to write. That's how most of our advanced user work with AI. They are in the loop. Every task starts and ends with a human. But then with Fable 5, I have personally moved on to the responsibilities or loops. I no longer tell Claude to investigate a particular crash report. It runs in a loop, watching every crash report that comes in. Its job is no longer to help me fix a crash. It's to keep our apps from crashing. And this is a seismic change. Now, you can argue that he's part of the Claude Code team. However, you can actually see that things are truly changing, especially when it comes to narrow tasks. These models are nowhere close to general intelligence, but for narrow, well-defined tasks, these models are getting really, really good. Now, I'm going to be creating a more detailed video on testing the model. I didn't want it to run it through some one-shot problems. I want to use these models on production code basis, and I'm going to report back. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Anyways, do let me know what you think about Fable 5 and Mythos 5 release. Is it actually as exciting as Anthropic is making out to be? Is it actually a step change? Or this is just yet another model release with a lot of marketing? Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.